Hey everybody, what is going on? John Ramdeen here, and this is Fight News Now Extra. Robin Black has returned from Jamaica, and we are chatting about the day's events. In the news today, a former WBC champion gets suspended, UFC trims their roster, and the UFC Prez is interested in the funky one. That is the news of the day. Now we find out more details. Former World Extreme Cage Fighting Bantamweight champion Brian Bowles has been suspended 9 months by the Nevada State Athletic Commission following a failed drug test. The 33-year-old had elevated levels of testosterone for his UFC 160 encounter with George Roop, where he lost by second-round TKO. Bowles had a ratio of 20-1 at the post-fight screening, and the NSAC's acceptable levels are 6-1. The Georgia native, who was fined $5,700, attended the NSAC hearing and stated he had no idea why he failed his test. The UFC has decided to pare down their roster, making cuts to a number of divisions, including lightweight and middleweight. Roger Gracie, Dave Herman, and ADCC champion Vinny Magalhães have all been released following losses. 6 fighters in total have been dropped, but there could be light at the end of the tunnel for the former World Jiu-Jitsu champion Gracie, as it seems the 31-year-old may have already secured a place in the ONE FC organization. And last but not least, it looks like UFC President Dana White is contemplating the idea of bringing Bellator 170-pound champion Ben Askren to the organization. White told reporters at the UFC Fight Night 26 pre-fight scrum that he would talk with the former University of Missouri wrestler about a spot in the world's most successful MMA promotion. Askren is currently in exclusive negotiations with the Bellator organization. Robin Black returns from the land of oxtail and ganja, and we are talking about Bellator and the UFC kinda. Ben Askren, will he go to the UFC, or will Bellator keep a hold of this guy?
First of all, man, I missed you guys. It was fun hanging out. You would have loved the greenery in Jamaica. But you know, when you're surrounded by fighting, you're discussing it, you're watching it, you're analyzing it, it's really weird to be away for a week. Before we get to Askren, what did I miss?
You really didn't miss anything, except that Eddie Alvarez has decided to stay with the Bellator organization. He's going to be fighting Michael Chandler in the co-main event of Rampage versus Tito. That's how awesome is that?
Yeah, man, you got to see that. That's the right thing for them. That's going to be really exciting. And speaking of Askren will do well if he goes to the UFC. We were talking about it earlier. It's like, what do you do if you're Ben Askren? You want to keep destroying guys like he did in his last fight for good money, or do you want to really test yourself? You say you can beat George St-Pierre. You say you want to fight those guys. You want to take that test. You can make some good money over there. It's a riskier proposition than beating on guys far beneath you. But it's for most of these guys, they want to chase something.
I like what you say there. It's a risk, because that's exactly what's happening. Do you stay with the Bellator organization, be kind of the face of the welterweight division as well as the promotion? We've heard it time and time again where people say this guy could be a top 5 guy. This could be the guy that beats George St-Pierre, and that's what Bellator needs. All they need is that question to be asked, and then people start contemplating and speculating whether or not this guy can hang with the best in the world. Whereas if you go to the UFC, your first fight could be against Damian Maia, it could be against Rory McDonald.
Yeah, it didn't work out that well for Hector Lombard
exactly,
so far.
And that's what it comes down to. Do you want to stay as a small fish in a big pond, or be a big fish in a small pond? I mean, it comes down to money for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, for Askren, this is a nice problem to have. Like if you're going to have a hard time deciding, I mean, did I want the jerk chicken or the jerk pork this week? That's a nice place to be. That's kind of where he's at. Do I want to make good money, be on the cover of their video game when they make one, headline their main event their pay-per-views, all of that kind of stuff? Or do you want to go and really chase that thing? Prove to yourself. This is a guy who spent a lifetime trying to prove he was the best. You can go and do that now.
UFC President Dana White, is this the right move, considering the fact that he's just kind of giving credence to the Bellator organization, looking to sign Eddie Alvarez? He signed Hector Lombard, now looking to sign Ben Askren. If Michael Chandler's contract was up, and if Dana White wanted to, they would go after this guy. So is this the right move from the UFC, considering the fact everybody knows that they're number 1, but they're now telling everybody, we're number 1, but Bellator's number 2?
Yeah, maybe. You know what? This is Dana White. You look at it, you take a bit of time and you research it. This is probably the greatest promoter in the history of sports promotion. Don King was an evil terror of a promoter, but he was incredibly successful, and he kind of follows in that line. And, they've done what they've wanted. They've been in a world where McDonald's is the only restaurant on earth, and they're McDonald's. They can do what they want. Now they actually have to consider how this affects or reinforces or proves something to their competitor. And I think this is new territory for them, and I think they're going to start treading a little bit carefully there.
For Bellator, if they decide to keep Ben Askren, what challenges are for them? Do they have to go out and find the best 170-pound fighters outside of the UFC? Do they take a number of UFC cast-offs? Do they work with organizations like the World Series of Fighting or ONE FC? Or is it just try to continue to develop your own talent?
Man, there's not a 170-pounder on the planet that's not signed by somebody that can fight Ben Askren. You can't convince an educated audience that somebody can fight this guy. And at certain points, they're like, we're not going to take cast-offs, and they didn't, so they let John Fitch go to the World Series of Fighting. John Fitch would be perfect for Ben Askren. This would be a perfect fight, a perfect setup fight. Is it the most exciting on paper? Doesn't really matter. They need fights that matter. And now then they went and signed other guys, Tito versus Rampage. So they're still not quite sure what they're doing. They're still feeling their way out. And this is when, that can be a risky proposition. But I don't know, man, if you're Ben Askren, money and make it have a bit of an easier life, or while you're still youngish, chase that dream as far as you can chase.
For Bellator, obviously, they got their show coming up in November. Do you try to get Ben Askren signed or re-signed and get him on that pay-per-view? You have Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler fighting for the title. No title on the line between Rampage and Tito. Are you trying to show everybody your champions for this pay-per-view, do you believe?
Yeah, I think if you're Bellator, you just go after this with a contract that's too hard to ignore. They got all kinds of money. They're going to have to play big money hands of poker if they're going to really make this Viacom MMA thing work. They have lots of money. Throw all kinds of money at them. Get it signed. Show everybody that the UFC can't take your guys, and then worry about opponents for him.
But you don't expect Bellator to offer Askren the same type of contract the UFC offered Hector Lombard. Hector Lombard, $400,000 a fight with a $300,000 signing bonus. I think those days are over.
Yeah, but you can look at an Alvarez contract that they offered in Bellator matched. Just offer him that one. I think he'll take it.
Well, I know it's going to be an exciting pay-per-view. It goes down in November, but don't go anywhere. More Fight News Now Extra is still to come.